Big time.
comfortability factor there.
Questions for Coach Dawson?
Yep, that was easy.
Coach, could you talk about some of the problems that their defense creates for you?
Well, you can tell, it's a different coordinator from last year, but some similarities last year and some things that are different. Obviously everybody puts their spin on things when they take it over, but you can tell that they don't want you to run the ball on them. They're pretty aggressive as far as getting to the ball and filling the gaps, and we're gonna have to do some things in the run game to allow us some success there, because they're pretty good up front against the run game. So very aggressive style of defense. I would actually say that the structure of their team is probably similar to ours. Overall, offensively, we're pretty similar to those guys. I've known Seth and Graham for a long time. Worked with their receiver coach at Kentucky. He was my receiver coach there. So offensively, you're probably going to see similar offenses out there. And defensively, I would say there's probably more similarities than there are differences.
After the North Texas game, what are some things that you've seen that you guys have improved on?
After the North Texas game?
Yes.
From last year?
Not North Texas, I mean Louisiana Monroe, my bad.
Oh, as far as the off week goes, we had our normal off week practices where we sprinkled in some game plan stuff, but really we just wanted good on good work and get healthy. I think that having some people come back that were injured is going to be important for us. But to answer that question, I don't know until we play. Sometimes you have an off week and it helps, and sometimes you have an off week and you go out there and you can't get a first down. So we'll see how our speed and tempo is. I think more importantly, I think this week's practice is probably more important than last week's practice as far as, okay, let's get out there and get kick-started again. Because the mentality is different when you don't play a game on Saturday. It just is. There's no way around it.
Griggs ran the football a lot against Louisiana Monroe.
Yeah.
Is that a byproduct of what they were doing, or is that something y'all were consciously trying to get in every game with offense this year to try to change up things a little bit?
I think I would say a little bit of both. I think that there's times where, the guy's an athletic guy. Both quarterbacks are athletic guys. So, I want to try to stress the defense as much as I can. And I would be dumb if I didn't sit here and use their athletic ability to help us offensively. So, it was something that, you go week 1, week 2, week 3. Week 1, we had it's hard to see sometimes, but we had a good bit of the same stuff, but they were so heavy up front that you never get to see it. I think you had a couple runs here and there, but for the most part, a lot of that stuff was taken away. And so, but, I would, going into every game, I'm going to try to take advantage of the weapons we have, and that's obviously a weapon we have. So trying to find creative ways to get him in space.
Thought the flow, thought some big plays, penalties kind of gobbled those up against Monroe.
Yeah.
How do you address that, or do you address that? Because some of it seemed to be aggressive.
Yeah, you definitely address it, because I will say I I honestly thought it was a well called game.
Okay.
I thought we earned them. I think we got to do a better job of getting our hands off people. There is a fine line where we preach, up front, and it was scattered around. It just wasn't one guy. It was O-lineman a couple times. It was slot receivers. Heck, the second play of the game, we held down the field. It was a long run play, like a 40-yard run play. But where do you temper that back? You want to be aggressive, and we're trying to get those guys to have great effort and block. But ultimately, you got to play smart too. And smart's a word that I've used a lot over the course of the last week and a half. Like, look, guys. We're sitting here, and you look at that day 2 Saturdays ago, we had a decent offensive day if you take away those penalties. If you take away those penalties, we have a really good offensive day, because we had 10 penalties on offense of 10 to 15 yards. Well, heck, breaking down the film, you know how many 2nd and 20s and 3rd and 20s that got us in? Well, you're punting, We executed on really a couple of those 3rd and longs, which helped. There was one 3rd and 20 where we hit Stags and it became a 4th and 1. Well, Thank God, because it was a 3-point game. You know what I mean? So, But offensively, we can't get in that situation. I mean, if every one of those situations, and you take it to the first drive of the game, we go down and score. The second drive of the game, we're driving. If we score that drive, the temperament of the game is different. Well, we get to a 2nd and 1 and we get a personal foul penalty. Now it's 3rd and 16 instead of 3rd and 1. Well, that changes the whole flow of the game. Now you give them hope. Now instead of being 14-0, it's 7-0. We're punting and they go score. Now it's 7-7, all because of one penalty. You know, so you have to play smarter, and you never know when, you know, that lapse in judgment is going to cost you because it changes the flow of the game. And that's the one thing I tried to explain to our guys after that game is like, look, guys, don't be selfish to the point where you affect the flow of the game. Like, there is a flow of the game with offense, defense, and special teams that if that gets, you know, that's why field position is so important. You know, I mean, heck, if you do something on special teams where you flip the field and now you're playing on the 1 and they're playing on the 50, well, that's a different game. And so that affected the flow of the game because instead of driving down and scoring again, now we're in a 3rd and 1, now we're 3rd and 16, now we're punting. Now they get a decent return, they go score, now it's 7-7. Ball game now, you know.
Can you talk about, it seemed like a boxing match for a while, they would score and then you would turn around and answer. Can you talk about that? I mean, just how that was as far as team morale, you know, just being able to answer every time they scored, you all offense came out and
I
answered.
think that's one extreme positive from the game is that, you know, when they scored, we scored. You know, we always answered the bell, which was a good thing. Now, like, I would like to have it to where we don't have to have them score for us to score. That would be nice, just to go down and just drive the field and score, you know. But ultimately, you know, when we were needed the most, we responded, and I thought that was a huge positive.
Ito, pretty amazing game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he, you know, just one of those games where, you know, you just keep getting in the ball, really, you know, I mean, you know, what do you say about that guy other than at the end, thank God we had him because it really, you know, sealed the deal. And and I think he would say this too. I mean, I thought we did a really good job up front at the end of the game. You know, some of those holes were big enough for my man AJ to run through here. Now he wouldn't have made the safety miss like he did.
Talk about Robertson a little bit and what his strong points are.
Well, I mean, he's been extremely consistent, you know, this whole year in camp and everything. I mean, he really has. I mean, you can see, and that's why it's so important, you know, year after year after year, just to, you know, everybody's a different player every year. It's funny how, you know, I've seen guys, you know, from their junior year to senior year, you know, you look out there and you're like, who the heck is that guy? You know, I mean, that wasn't what I was looking at last year, you know, and I think it's just the natural maturity of players you see with him. You know, his comfort level with the offense. Now he's a true go-to guy. You know, you can tell, I mean, Quadre feels extremely comfortable with him. And, you know, the biggest deal is those one-on-one balls that we need to make downfield, he comes down with a lot of them, you know. And so, I mean, he's a physical guy. He runs better than probably people think. But physically, he's a big, strong kid, too.
His run after the catchability seems to be, I mean, would you say that's maybe close to the top of his skill set?
Yeah, he's hard to bring down. I mean, he really is. I mean, he's a strong runner. And so those tunnel screens and stuff that he catches, I mean, he's a very thick-built kid, you know, and so he's a hard kid for those DBs to get on the ground.
That connection with Quadre, the fact that they played high school together, I mean, how much of a difference does that make?
I think it makes a little bit of a difference because their comfort level is just so high. You know, I mean, I think that, you know, it could hurt at times too, to be honest with you, you know, and I think that, you know, through the course of the Southern game, you know, we had an issue of, you know, of just let the game come to you, you know, as far as, like, as a quarterback, you always got to be careful of trying to get the ball to somebody. You know, typically people get their touches through the natural course of things, especially in our offense. So we don't have to sit there and try to, you know, force feed somebody the ball. They'll get their touches, and the moment you start doing that, you know, typically karma gets you, you know, and then, you know, bad stuff happens. So I do think with their relationship, I think it's more important to kind of temper that a little bit, you know, because they do have such a comfort level to each other that we got a lot of other good players too, you know.
Anything else?
All right,
Coach,
guys.
thank you.
Appreciate it.